Hello friends, I am back with another video of DevOps India. In this video we are going to see how can you deploy your code on EC2 instances which are behind the load balancer or autoscaling group. As you can see in diagram, the Jenkins is going to play a vital role in this use case. So Jenkins job will create a build of your source code and it will archive your code and put on S3 bucket. At the same time, it will trigger your code deployment. Using that deployment, CodeDeploy will deploy that code on all the running instances behind the load balancer or autoscaling group. So before we go ahead, let me tell you one thing. As you can see, the code is archived on S3. So EC2 instances should have permission to access object on S3. So we will create a service role for EC2 instances. Through that, EC2 instance can interact with S3. At the same time, we need another service role. Using that, CodeDeploy service can interact with EC2 load balancer and autoscaling group. So let's create a service role for EC2 instance and CodeDeploy service. So let me navigate to IAM service. IAM. Move to roles. And role is EC2 permission here is for S3. So S3 read only permission is sufficient for this role. Next, the name is EC2 S3 role. Okay. Now we need to create a role for CodeDeploy service. Create role, CodeDeploy. Allow CodeDeploy to call AWS services such as autoscaling on your behalf. You can check in policy what policies and what services can be interacted by this role. Using this role, CodeDeploy can interact with autoscaling, CloudWatch, EC2, ELB version 2, resource group tagging and SNS. Review, name, CodeDeploy, role. So we are done with CodeDeploy and EC2 service role. Here I am going to create EC2 instances on which my application will be deployed. So right now I am going to create 4 EC2 instances behind a load balancer. I have already modified AMI available with my account. Using that AMI I am going to create these instances. So let me navigate to EC2 service. EC2 So I don't have any running instances right now. So let me create instances. In my AMI I will get my all modified AMI. So you can see I have 2 AMI. I am going to use the first one, all CodeDeploy instances. I am going to create 4 instances using this AMI, and all the prerequisites are available on this instance. And like I have installed LAMP as my application is PHP based. So all the prerequisites are already there, and most important thing, the codedeploy-agent should be installed and running on your instances. So it is already installed and enabled on boot. So whenever these instances will come up, my agent will be running. I will let you know how you can install CodeDeploy-agent manually. Okay, so let's select this. I'm going to use free tier for the demo. Okay, so number of instances 4 and subnet is like this. Okay, now the IAM role, this is very important. As we have seen, we have created 2 roles, one for code deploy and one for EC2. So we are going to select EC2. You can see the EC2 has 3 roles. And you can leave rest of the things. Add storage. In my case, I am going to use 8 GB, sufficient for me. And a tag, giving a name, all code deploy instances. Security groups, let me choose the existing one I have. Okay, as you can see, it has 80, 443, 8080, 192. Okay, review and launch, and I'm going to select my key pair. Launch instances. So as you can see, it has created 4 instances. Here we go. You can see all the instances are running. So now I am going to create a load balancer through which the traffic will be distributed on all these instances. Load balancer, you will get load balancer here. Okay, create a load balancer. I'm going to use application load balancer for my HTTP application. Create, name is CodeDeploy ELB. Yeah, it is internet facing, or I can select internal, but in this demo I'm going to use internet facing. HTTPS, VPC yes. So I'm going to select all the availability zone, or whether I can select only one. But if you have instances in different availability zone, I would recommend to use all availability zone. Security group, it is throwing a warning that I have not created a listener for HTTPS protocol, but it is demo. I'm not going to use HTTPS. Okay, security group, I'm use the existing one. Okay, now creating a target group. Target group name is CodeDeploy TG, and I'm going to path is index.php and leaving all the things as it is. You can modify these things according your requirement. The overall tutorial is on code deploy, so we are not focusing on the each element of ELB. And register target. So you can see the 4 instances are running. We can select 1, 2, 3, 4 and add to target. So these are the instances on which ELB will distribute the traffic. Review and create. So ELB part is done. The next important thing is setting up application on CodeDeploy. Let's do it. So I am navigating to code deploy service, deploy. Okay, so right now I have no application created on code deploy, so you can see there is no application listed. So I'm going to create one. Sample deployment, custom deployment. Custom deployment that we are going to use. Let me tell you what is sample deployment. Sample deployment basically is for the user who are very new or who are not familiar with the code deploy service. So they can use sample deployment. Take a look how it does work, how it creates instances, or how it deploy code on the different instances with a different type of deployment. So right now I have already running instances, so I'm going to use custom deployment. Skip walkthrough. Name my first web app. Okay, compute platform. So CodeDeploy is basically available for EC2 instances and AWS Lambda functions. So in this tutorial we are going to use EC2 instances or on-premises instances. So I have created my instances on EC2, so I have selected compute platform as EC2 instances. You can see AWS Lambda is also available, but we are going to use EC2. The group name, I'm going to give a group name. Okay, the deployment type, let me tell you this thing. So in this tutorial we are going to focus on in place deployment. Also I will let you know what is blue-green deployment. Okay. In place deployment is all about to deploy code on the instances, and during the deployment that specific instance would not be available or will be offline. In blue-green deployment, it creates a new set of instances, deploy all the codes, all the latest code on the instances, make them up and remove the old one. So usually you can use any of the type of deployment, but in this tutorial we are going to use in place deployment. In my next video we will use blue-green deployment. Okay, environment configuration. I'm not going to use any auto scaling group. All my instances behind the load balancer, so I'm going to just use my EC2 instances. So code deploy. Okay, so it is showing 4 instances and the list of all 4 instances available here. Enable load balancer. Yes, I'm going to use load balancer. Application load balancer. Yes, the code deploy. Next thing is deployment configuration. Deployment configuration is all about how the code deploy is going to deploy the code on the instances. So let's take a look. Deployment configuration. So there are 3 deployment configuration available right now. First one is code deploy default all at once. So using this configuration, code deploy will deploy code on the all instances at once. If you are having 10 instances, it will deploy the code on 10 at once. So there are possibility of outage, or you can say downtime of your instance. So it is not recommended to use all at once configuration. And the next one is code deploy default half at once. So half at once, if you are having 10 instances, so it will deploy code on first 5, and once the deployment done on first 5, it will deploy on the rest one. And the last one is code deploy default one at a time. So this is the most recommended deployment configuration, which has 99% of health. If you are having 10 instances, so it will deploy the code on each instances one by one. During the deployment, that specific instances will not be available, but other 9 will have the availability, or they will be available. Okay, so this is the most recommended configuration type, so I'm going to use this one. In advanced, let's see what trigger. So during the deployment there are couple of events happens, so you can have the notification or the trigger on each event. So right now I'm going to create a trigger. Whenever a specific event perform, it will notify me. So I'm going to create a trigger for notification. Notify me for failure. And event is fail rollback. So I have already created one SNS topic notification. So I have created email me a notification. I will let you know in my SNS video how to create SNS topic and what is SNS. So, and you can see the trigger is created. I'm not going to use any alarm as such. For alarm you can create CloudWatch alarm for deployment group, but I'm not going to use. And rollback, yes, I want rollback when the deployment fails. Next is service role. So we have seen how we have created a service role for code deploy. I'm going to use that service role for the application. That was code deploy. You can see it right here, code deploy role. Create application. And you can see application is created. So next thing we are going to see how we can configure a Jenkins job to trigger a deployment. So let me log into my Jenkins and see how we can configure a code deploy job. For code deploy we required a code deploy plugin. So manage Jenkins, manage plugins. In available section you search for AWS Code Deploy. As I have already installed this plugin, so you can see it is available in code installed section. Okay, let's create an item, code deploy job freestyle project. Okay, so my source code is available on GitHub sample site. Okay, so let me tell you how we can configure this job. Let's get source code management. Okay, and in post build action we need to find deploy an application to AWS Code Deploy. Okay, so parameter it requires first is code deploy application name. So we can find the code deploy application name. Okay, my first the group name is my first web app group, and it requires AWS Code Deployment config. So we have selected config. We have selected code deploy default one at a time. So if you need to know about all those three default configuration, you can click on this and you can check how the minimum health host value is for these three type of configuration. So I need to give this name in my configuration and let me select the correct. So I am in US East 1. It requires one S3 bucket. In that it will upload archive of code. So it requires a S3 bucket, and using S3 bucket it will put the archive of source code. So let me see if I have any S3 bucket available. Okay, so I am having one bucket. Let me create one folder name CodeDeploy 5. CodeDeploy archive. So it requires CodeDeploy S3 bucket. So bucket name, and it also need the folder name. An S3 folder name is called by prefix. Okay, and the last thing is use AWS secret key. You can use this secret key in this job as well, or create a global credential. So I'm using access key and secret key in this job only. So let me get my access key and secret key. So let me tell you how we can create a access key and secret key using IAM. Dashboard, users, create a user if you are not having any user. So right, I am having one user called Amrit Sharma. Click on that, and in security credential you can see I have two keys available. One is active, one is inactive. I am going to use the active one. If you wish to create another one, you can create that one as well. Okay, cannot exceed the quota of access key 2 per user. So I'm having 2 key and it is the limit, so I'm going to delete the first one. Now I can create access key. Okay, here is my access key. This is what I require, and the secret key. What you can see my access key and secret key in this video, but don't worry, I'm going to delete this access key and secret key after this tutorial. And let me check if we have missed anything. Great, so I think we are good here. So our Jenkins job is done. So let me tell you one thing about code deploy, how it does work with your source code. So it requires a YML file called appspec.yml. It has all the specification which are going to perform during the deployment. You should mention all the steps. So, or you can see the event in this file. So let me tell you, or let me show you how this file looks like in You can see file attribute is copying all the file from the source to the destination. Here source is the workspace and destination is HTML directory, and hooks. Hooks are the event that is going to perform in deployment. So before installation, before what action you want to perform. So I have written down some commands in small shell scripts, and you can see I have one folder called script, and all the scripts are available in this directory, and these all are the shell scripts. I have mentioned all the steps. For stop Apache, I want all the contents should be removed. So you can see here all the scripts are available for the different event. For stop Apache, I have given two commands like remove all the contents from HTML directory and stop Apache. Similarly, you can create multiple scripts and trigger these scripts in multiple events. So you need to understand how this appspec.yml file works. So take a look, or you can download this file from the GitHub repository. I'm going to give the URL of my GitHub repository in the description section. You can get from there. Okay, so this is all about the appspec.yml. So before I trigger this job, let me take a look to my load balancer. Okay, this is my load balancer and this is my DNS. So this is the DNS I can use. Okay, right now you can see it is giving me hello India, hello India, hello India, and hello India. I have refreshed this page 4 times and getting the same content. Let me start my Jenkins job. Build now. Okay, so it has created one zip in code deploy archive folder. S3. If I refresh this, okay, so our application deployment is in progress. You can see it is in progress. Let me see how the deployment group is behaving. Okay, so you can see 3 instances are in pending and 1 is in progress, because I have selected code deploy default one at a time configuration type. So that is why it is selecting 1 instances at a time. So once the deployment on this instance will be done, it will move to the another instance. So I am going to pause this video for a while. So meanwhile it is in process, we can see what events are going to perform. So first is block traffic. So it is on ELV. It is blocking the traffic for that specific instances. If I move to the ELV and go to the target groups, so you can see this instances it's draining. It is trying to deregister this instance from load balancer. It will deregister this instance, deploy all the latest code on this instance, and again it will register this instance in this load balancer. So these are the steps you can see written there. And the last is after allow traffic. So usually it takes time. We can wait for a while because we have 4 instances and it will perform same action on all the 4 instances. So let me pause this video. I will resume shortly. So you can see deployment on 1 instances has been successfully done and it start to deploy on another instance. Meanwhile, if I try to access the website, let me refresh my website first. second. So you can see in the second refresh it has the latest code. On third it is again the old one, because we have right now 3 instances which are having old code and 1 instances which has latest code. So this way it is going to deploy on all instances one by one. So this entire process will take couple of minutes, so I'm going to pause my video. So you can see deployment on all the instances has been done. Now we can check using website URL whether we are getting the latest code or not. Refresh. Okay, so we are having latest code on all the instances running behind the load balancer. So this is all about the code deployment we can use using in place deployment. Next video will be about how we can use blue green deployment.